The coronavirus crisis has opened an interesting window onto the thinking of political leaders who seem to think their calling is to run our lives for us. Many were flummoxed when Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and other Democrats inserted support for, you guessed it, Planned Parenthood, America's largest abortion provider, into a coronavirus crisis relief package. Their insistence on kicking back money to abortionists actually delayed the relief that went out to millions of Americans. But in doing so, Pelosi and Schumer were merely scratching the backs of those who scratch theirs. It went virtually unreported by the media, but at the beginning of 2020, Planned Parenthood announced it was throwing $45 million into the upcoming election from its for-profit lobbying arm to support pro-abortion candidates. Jenny Lawson, executive director of Planned Parenthood Votes, said they are comfortable with every major Democratic candidate and decried the pro-life gains made under President Trump. This ministry is a nonpartisan organization, but thanks to our generous listeners, we speak clearly and without apology about the great moral issues of our day. And there is no moral issue greater than the abortion holocaust in America that has killed 60 million of our people. And the fact is, one of the two major political parties in America is in bed with the abortionists of Planned Parenthood. They get campaign dollars from Planned Parenthood, and they take care of their cronies when it comes to government funding, even if that comes at the expense of millions awaiting urgent financial relief during an unprecedented viral crisis. There is one party, and one party only, that is in the pocket of the abortion movement, something for all Christians and anyone who cares about the value of human life to remember when we go to the polls in November.